seems fashionable to talk all doom and gloom about the art market these days. But just this week, this painting by Arshile Gorky sold for $16 million at Hauser & Wirth. This painting by Joan Mitchell sold for a rumored $18 million at David Zwirner Gallery. And this painting by Julie Meyritu from 1979 sold for $6.75 million at the London-based White Cube Gallery. And all of this happened at Art Basel's signature art fair in Switzerland. So why do all of the most important galleries save their most important works to show at Basel in June? And how did this fair become so important? Well, I thought on the occasion of the opening of the 2024 version, we should go a little bit deeper. So, let's get into it. Art lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Christopher West, and this is the place where we talk about all things modern and contemporary art and design. And today I thought I would talk not about a particular artist or art movement, but an art fair. And if you're not familiar with the big art fairs, this is slightly different than the outdoor festivals you will see on town squares throughout the world. This is big business. Think of the fanciest trade show you possibly can, then make it twice as fancy. Add in some Loro Piana, caviar, and a bunch of champagne, and you might start to formulate an accurate picture. The process to show at Art Basel is highly competitive. Close to 300 galleries exhibit at the fair, but in fact, hundreds more apply. A smaller booth space for a young gallery starts around $12,000 and can go up to as much as $100,000 for the largest spaces occupied by the mega galleries. And remember, this is just for a long weekend. All in, once we factor in lodging, the dinners, and of course all the parties, galleries can spend close to $400,000 to have the privilege of exhibiting. Let me know in the comments if you've attended this or any other art fair. They really are fascinating. But how did this fair in Switzerland become so important? It all started in 1970 when three gallerists from Basel, Ernst Beiler, Trudel Buchner, and Balls Hilt decided to create an international art fair in their hometown. But this wasn't just three guys sitting in a bistro drinking beers that decided to put on an art event. It's important to look at the broader climate of the time. Think about Europe in the 1960s. They're still in a bit of a post-war cultural malaise. The Third Reich, not too long ago, was calling anything avant-garde degenerate. A lot of the top talent, the artists, the dealers, had fled war-torn Europe. And the epicenter of the art world, with the advent of abstract expressionism and later solidified by the emergence of pop art, had moved across the pond to New York. So the European dealers needed a way to jumpstart their industry. Thankfully, one thing that Europe did have was a tradition of medieval marketplaces and religious festivals that had become pilgrimages for so many. For centuries, events were created that served as marketplaces for individual traders, particularly specialists in books and antiquities. They had in their blood this practice of traveling to see exotic goods or attend unique events, hundreds of years before Woodstock. So in the 1960s, Rudolf Zwirner, yes, that is the father of the current mega dealer David Zwirner, started Art Cologne. He chose Cologne because it already had an established music and art scene that preferred the avant-garde, and it was close to an international airport with regular non-stop flights to New York. And thus the modern art fair was born. And what this fair did was condense an otherwise dispersed art trade and give them, for 5 days, a metropolitan center. All of a sudden you had German expressionists like Anselm Kiefer and Gerhard Richter showing alongside the American pop artist. And this first fair attracted more than 15,000 visitors. And they weren't merely spectators, they were buying. Joseph Beuys famously sold a piece to what would amount to more than $200,000 today, an almost unheard of sum in 1969. But Art Cologne's importance would diminish, not necessarily for anything they would do wrong, but from increased competition, particularly from a city 500 kilometers down the Rhine. You see, those three Swiss art dealers I mentioned earlier, Byler, Bruckner, and Hilt, had attended Art Cologne and saw the potential. They decided to translate the German experiment to their native cobblestone city of Basel. Basel is the meeting place of the Swiss, French, and German borders, and made an ideal hub for art commerce. This was also a gathering place for the European elite, who were excited to re-establish the continent as a genuine art destination. And so, in 1970, they started the Art Basel Fair. And when they did, it not only got the dealers excited, but the artists paid attention too. The inaugural edition was attended by Henry Moore, Robert Rauschenberg, Gilbert and George, just to name a few. While the American economy was struggling with a recession, American dealers like Leo Castelli and Sidney Janis turned to Basel to try and establish new markets. By 1975, 300 galleries were showing from more than 21 different countries. And they weren't just showing older, established artists. This was the place for young artists to make a splash. In 1979, they started a section called Perspective, which allowed emerging artists to experiment. Many artists we know and love today, like Julian Opie and Fiskley and Weiss, participated in that very first year of Perspective. And the collectors really started to come. Most notably were Don and Mira Rubel, who attended their first Art Basel in 1979. You may know them from their giant warehouse open to the public in Miami that houses their personal collection. And as years went on, Art Basel continued to try to differentiate itself from the increased competition. Not only was Art Cologne still around, but newcomers like FIAC in Paris and Art Chicago were attracting big numbers. What Art Basel was able to do in the 90s was secure a sponsorship from the behemoth UBS and started what might have been its most crowning achievement, the VIP card. No longer did the ultra-wealthy have to mix and mingle with those that simply paid the admission charge. They had their own roped-off lounge where champagne flowed like rivers, as well as special preview hours where they could navigate the entire fair without having to bump into the everyday, simple-minded, unwashed art lover. By the turn of the century, blue-chip galleries like Barbara Gladstone and Lorraine Augustine began to participate. And soon, Art Basel became too big for, well, Basel. Remember the Rubels I mentioned earlier? The ones in Miami with a giant vanity museum dedicated to their own collection? Well, they were instrumental in getting Art Basel to start their second fair in South Beach, Art Basel Miami. They knew American collectors liked to go to Florida in December, and this also provided easy access for the Latin American collectors. And now, in addition to Art Basel and Art Basel Miami, there is also Art Basel Hong Kong, and the most recent iteration, Art Basel Paris. Fun fact, if you want to talk about the original Art Basel, the one in Switzerland, you now need to say Art Basel Basel, just so everyone's clear about which one you're talking about. I attended the very first Art Basel Miami in 2002. It was supposed to begin in 2001, but was delayed by a year due to 9/11. I think I attended the first 8 North American versions, then missed a year, and I've been sporadic ever since. I've been to Art Basel Basel twice, and if you have a choice or a chance, I think this is the one you need to go to. South Beach is just, well, let's just say I don't like South Beach as much as I did when the fair first started in 2002. In Switzerland, you'll see the best art, and although Basel loves to jack up the prices on food and hotel rooms, I find it just so much more enjoyable. I have yet to attend Art Basel Hong Kong or Paris, but they are definitely on the list. Have you attended any version of Art Basel, or do you plan to? Let me know in the comments. For collectors, I think it is a must-attend event. And although the commercial nature of it can seem gross to artists, I think it's important for them to attend too. Not just to see what's happening in the art world today, but to get a better sense of how the sausage is made. You guys rock for watching this long. If you want more on the art market, you can click here. Make sure you're subscribed, please like this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Ciao!